Is there a truly reality out there that humans could really know? It's an age-old battle between realists and absolutists. God is not great, how religion ruins everything. And yet it's utterly and totally ridiculous. We need to live for something beyond ourselves. You know, I've always been a fan of the British writer Christopher Hitchens. I've read him for years, and I love his writing, even when I disagree with him, which is more often than not. And probably no more have I disagreed with him or stronger than when he came out with his best-selling book called God is Not Great, How Religion Ruins Everything. And he's sort of thrown himself in with a group known as the New Atheists, a very vocal and very erudite group of scholars such as Daniel Dennis, Sam Harris, and Richard Dawkins, who are kind of all-holds-barred atheists who are just totally attacking faith and religion of any kind at all. And I want to look at something that Hitchens said in a different book that deals with this, because I think there's an important point that we can take from what he said. Yeah, Hitchens, as I said, Hitchens has thrown himself in with these new atheists, and probably the king of the new atheists right now, I'd say, is Richard Dawkins. He's kind of the Muhammad Atta of the whole movement. And I want to read you a quote where Dawkins said, because I think this catches the essence of everything. He says, "I am not attacking any particular god or gods." You know, he says, "I am attacking gods, all gods, and anything and everything supernatural, wherever and whenever they have been or have been invented." In other words, the new atheists, or it's a full frontal assault on any kind of religious belief of any kind. And I really think basically it's an overreaction to the fanatical religious terrorism that we've been seeing. But anyway, unfortunately, Christopher Hitchens has thrown himself in with this group. And besides his book, God is Not Great, he also wrote another book. He came out with a book called The Portable Atheist, in which he compiled a few dozen excerpts from atheists and skeptics over the centuries in regard to faith or the lack thereof. And basically, he starts with Lucretius, centuries ago, and works through Hume and Shelley, and he ends up with Sam Harris and the like. He takes folks on sort of like a guided tour of atheist and skeptical arguments against the existence of God. Now, and that's fine. I mean, the arguments are out there, and really, there was nothing new in the book. These are the same old arguments that they've been throwing out for centuries. But what I really want to concentrate on, though, is there's one paragraph in the whole book that I want to look at, and it's an introduction from, Hitchens wrote the introduction. And I want to look at that because I think what he wrote is very powerful, very poignant, and yet it's utterly and totally ridiculous. Now, the context has to do with the meaning of life apart from the existence of God. He's arguing, as others have, that answers to the meaning of life can be found elsewhere without God. And listen to the quote of what he says. He says, "There are the beauties of science and the extraordinary marvels of nature. There is the consolation and irony of philosophy. There are infinite splendors of literature and poetry, not excluding the liturgical and devotional aspects of these. There is the grand resource of art, music, and architecture, again, not excluding those elements that aspire to the sublime. In all these pursuits, any one of them enough to absorb a lifetime, there may be found a sense of awe and magnificence that does not depend at all on the invocation of the supernatural." Well, in one sense, if what he said wasn't so sad, so pathetic, it would almost be funny. I mean, think about what he's saying. There are beauties in nature and science. Okay, so what? But how does that give us the meaning to the answer, the meaning of life? Though that nature is beautiful. I remember Ludwig Wittgenstein once said, when all possible philosophical questions are answered, where scientific questions are answered, we haven't even come close to answering the important questions of life. So, okay, so nature is beautiful, science is beautiful. What does that do to help you understand how you should live or what the meaning of your life is? And he says there's consolation and irony in philosophy. Well, there's plenty of irony in philosophy, perhaps, but consolation? Where? With whom? And consolation about what? The fact is that we die and we remain in the tomb forever, with no hope of anything beyond the grave. That's basically what philosophy says to us. Some consolations. The philosophers in the end have come to a dead end in answering the hard questions of existence. They have none. All these philosophers are dead themselves. And there are infinite splendors of literature and poetry. Well, great. I love literature. I love poetry. But none of them have solved the deepest questions about the mystery of life, such as the death, the cold grave that awaits us. Poetry's great, but who's going to be reading Shakespeare while rotting in the grave? Art, music, literature, again, they're wonderful, uplifting, can really stir my heart. I agree with all that. There is a sense of awe and magnificence. I agree that we don't need any invocation of the supernatural, as Hitchens writes, in order to get that from art and music. But then I say, then what, Christopher? What good is a de Kooning painting going to do you when someone you love just drops dead? What questions can Mozart answer for you on your deathbed? Folks have long sought art and music as an answer to life's questions, but they don't work. I can remember another British philosopher named Brian McGee. He wrote about how he was struggling with the meaning of life, struggling with the fact that he realized that one day he was going to die, and everybody who knew him was going to die, and how that threatened to nullify everything about his life. And so he said he was going to try to find answers through art and literature. He tried other things, and he tried that as well. And how well did that work? Well, here, this is what he wrote. He said here, I am as baffled now by the larger metaphysical questions of my existence as I was when I was a child. Indeed, more so, because my greater understanding of the depth and difficulties of the questions themselves is now so much more greater. What? Having read or seen the Merry Wives of Windsor 10 times? Or having, listened to Wagner's Tristan and Isolde 50 times, Brian McGee's still going to die. And worse, that death even after, he's going to die even after he saw all that stuff, and that death threatens to nullify all that came before and all that came after it. How could that be? Sure, Shakespeare's good, and Wagner's good, but so what? For solving the problems of death, the greatest challenge to the meaning of life, they're useless. It's useless. Shakespeare's dead. Wagner's dead. And everyone who ever listens to them or ever listened to them is going to die too. And seeking answers there is like asking a homeless man dying of AIDS for the secrets of life's success. See, that's the thing I found so sad with what Hitchens wrote. He says, we don't need religion. We don't need faith. We're going to get it in art. We're going to get it in philosophy. We're going to get it in science. And yet, those things answer nothing of the hard questions. Nothing. They don't take anybody out of the grave. They don't explain why sin, why suffering, why we hurt as we do. And then we suffer and we go through life as we do. And then we die and it's all gone for eternity. In the end, the reality of death short circuits any and all attempts to find true meaning and purpose in life, doesn't it? I mean, if you're logical, if you're reasonable, then you can see that ultimately death will destroy everything. Because the natural world, it's ultimately going to take everything away. So that would seem to me then, that the answer is not going to be in art. The answer is not going to be in philosophy. The answer is not going to be listening to Mozart or looking at paintings of Rubens or Monet. If we're going to have an answer to the question of death, and which ultimately the meaning of life, it's going to have to be in something, I would think, supernatural, in something beyond nature, because the natural in and of itself sweeps us all away and all human consciousness away as well. That's why I found Christopher Hitchens wrote was so sad and so weak. There's got to be more. If not, in the end, there's nothing but the eternal darkness of an eternal death in a universe that scientists say is slated to its own eternal demise itself. Again, that's why I thought that Hitchens thing was so sad. Because one day the universe itself is going to be gone, if what the scientists say. And if the universe ends, where does that ultimately leave us and the meaning of our lives?